The LAAT set a standard in troop transport capabilities, but it had one great limitation. A limitation fixed by a new class of ship. The new class attack shuttle. Was it competitive with the LAAT? And why was it critical for the war effort? This vehicle entered service after the first Battle of Geonosis, when the LAAT survivability in combat came under a level of scrutiny. While the gunship performed well and proved effective, its limitations in regards to protecting the cargo pushed Republic High Command to explore alternative designs. One of those alternatives was the new class attack shuttle. Manufactured by Singa Spaceworks, it was initially considered a potential successor to the LAAT as the war progressed. That, however, never fully happened. Instead, the new class addressed several areas where the LAAT fell short, but it did so under a different design philosophy, introducing its own set of trade-offs. As a result, the new class did not replace the LAAT, it complemented it, having a new, distinct role within the Republic Navy. Before we get into the specs, however, let's clarify one thing. The new class attack shuttle, contrary to the name, was developed as a transport first and gunship second. Now, starting with the wings, they were folding just like the V-19 design. At the same time, it measured 18.9 meters in length and stood 24 meters tall, making it one of the larger shuttles fielded by the Republic Navy. Despite its size, the new class was highly agile, capable of reaching atmospheric speeds of up to 850 km per hour. It was equipped with a Class 1 hyperdrive, comparable to capital ships like the Venator itself. In addition, it carried a backup Class 12 hyperdrive, significantly slower and intended strictly for emergency use. When it came to crew protection and damage control, Singa Spaceworks went for a heavily reinforced hull, but they did not stop there. A shield generator mounted along the dorsal rear of the craft allowed the shuttle to absorb substantial damage before being disabled. In the event of a crash landing, the forward cockpit section could detach from the main hull and function as an escape pod, greatly improving crew and passenger survival chances. If detachment was not possible, the passenger bay featured crash-rated seating equipped with a harness that folded over the chest and locked occupants in place. This prevented uncontrolled movement during impact and further increased survivability. The emphasis on protection remained consistent throughout the shuttle's service life. But this is where the trade-off appears. As mentioned earlier, the new class was designed as a transport first and gunship second. Because of that, its armament was limited to 8 laser cannons, no missile or rocket systems of any kind. These cannons were mounted forward, arranged in pairs to provide front coverage only. They were not suited for close air support and as such were used for self-defense. In terms of utilities, a standard new class carried supplies sufficient for approximately 30 days, including maintenance, rations, medical, and general equipment. An extra piece of equipment was a pair of magnetic clamps located on the ventral side of the shuttle, allowing it to pick up objects and ferry them around. Beyond that, it featured standard navigation and sensors, functional but unremarkable. And lastly, its one and only access point was located on the chin, which lowered in a ramp configuration. When it came to crew layout, the shuttle was operated by a pilot and co-pilot, with the latter managing the weapon systems and assuming flight control in the event of an emergency. The access to the cockpit was provided by an elevating entry system, allowing the chairs to move vertically while keeping the underside of the cockpit clear for passenger dismounts. Beyond the flight crew, the shuttle could accommodate up to 30 passengers within its troop compartment. All this for 85,000 credits, including the limitations, of course. The shuttle's internal compartment was restricted to transporting troops and small cargo only, making vehicles such as the AT-RT impossible to deploy from the inside. Its offensive potential was more limited by the absence of rockets or any missile systems. Without those options, the shuttle lacked any key armament often used to compensate for the shortcomings of standard laser cannons. As a result, this configuration discouraged the new class from being employed in sustained close air support roles. The one frontal access point was also a hit or miss, turning it into a bottleneck if the shuttle had to deploy troops under enemy fire. With that, the shuttle found its place alongside the LAAT rather than in competition with it, complementing Republic troop transport within the Navy. Instead of operating as a gunship, it leveraged its hyperdrive capability and seated troop compartment to transport personnel over long distances without relying on a mothership. This made the shuttle a strong choice for special operations units, such as clone commandos tasked with traversing vast distances while maintaining a low profile, a role capital ships were not quite suited for. Its greatest strength ultimately was its autonomy. It made its debut as early as the Battle of Christopsis, conducting transport operations throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars. It was routinely tasked with carrying VIPs, officers, and special forces on missions and inspections where larger vessels were impractical or unable to operate. After the war, the shuttle gradually began to replace the LAAT as the newly formed Empire shifted towards a revised doctrine. With open warfare coming to an end, the LAAT's gunship-focused design became less desirable. Even so, the new class was never intended as a permanent solution. It served as a transitional platform, bridging the gap until newer designs like the Lambda-class shuttle were settled in. Some leftovers were also naturally found by rebels. In time, however, the new class followed the same fate as the LAAT. It was decommissioned and forgotten. When it comes to real-world analogs, there is no straight source explaining what the new class was directly based on. Any comparison remains theoretical and is best approached through doctrine rather than design. As such, the shuttle seems to align more closely with aircraft like the V-22 Osprey. Now, it may sound contradictory as the Osprey was made to take off carriers, but stay with me. It's not because where it starts from, but because of why it exists, the problem it solves. The Osprey was developed to overcome the limitations of conventional helicopters. Limited range, reduced speed, and dependence on forward staging areas. Its role was not to loiter in contested airspace or provide sustained fire support, but to move personnel quickly and independently over long distances. The shuttle fulfills a similar role within the Republic Navy, equipped with a hyperdrive and designed around autonomy rather than firepower. Not a pure frontline combat asset, but a force multiplier that allowed commanders to project personnel where traditional assault transports were impractical. And with that, while the LAAT was busy blowing stuff up in the heat of combat, the new class made sure the right people got to the right places without a whole warship behind them.